Hello, scientists. Let's get started. So, let's talk about the characteristics of living things. How do you know if something is alive or not alive? We're going to look into one, two, three, four, five, six different things that tell us that something is alive. All right, I'm Ms. Newton. Let's get started. So, living things need all of these things in order, well, they have the characteristics of all of these things. They need energy to carry out life processes, such as metabolism. That's basically what that means. And this means that they're able to create ATP or some sort of an energy source in order to be alive. Living things are composed of one or more cells. These are building blocks. So one cell, yeah, we do have things that are alive that have one cell, like bacteria. Living things respond to their environment. This is adaptation. So for example, if I were to go into a dark room and shine a flashlight into my eye, I would see my pupil constrict, get smaller. That's what it means by adaptation. I'm adapting to the increased light in my environment. I can also adapt to maybe temperature changes. Living things grow and repair. Living things can reproduce. And living things maintain a stable internal environment, otherwise known as homeostasis. So let's look at each of these in a little more depth. Living things need energy. That's the first characteristic of living things. Energy is the ability to do work. Does that mean energy is just when I'm working, like creating this video right now? No, it's the ability for me to do things, for my cells to do their work. The source of energy differs for each type of living thing. All animals must eat in order to obtain energy. Animals also eat to obtain building materials. So do they always eat with their mouths? No. A mushroom does not eat with its mouth. It lives off of rotting logs. Plants, how do they get energy? They undergo photosynthesis, using energy from the sun to make their own food. Mushrooms and other fungi obtain energy from other organisms. The rotting tree is a source of energy for mushrooms and other fungi. And here's a little picture or image of a rotting log and the mushrooms basically growing on the side. Living things are made up of cells, even if it's only one cell. Cells are the smallest structural and functional unit of all living things, meaning, yeah, we do have atoms that are smaller than cells, but the atoms alone can't do any function for our bodies. A cell can. A cell can perform cellular respiration and give us ATP, for example. A cell of the pancreas can create insulin to regulate our blood sugar. A single atom can't do anything for us. Some organisms, like bacteria, plankton that live in the ocean, or the paramecium, are unicellular, one cell. Other organisms have millions, billions, or trillions of cells. Us. Living things maintain a stable internal environment. This is also known as homeostasis. And we'll go over an example, a pretty complex example, in just a moment. So what is homeostasis? It's maintaining a balance inside the body or the cells of an organism, keeping a stable internal environment. Before we get into this complex example, just when your body temperature goes up, that's an example. Your body will do certain things in order to decrease your temperature back to normal. You may start sweating. Okay, so that's an example. All right, let's look at the example of blood glucose, sugar levels getting too high. The pancreas will release insulin to shuttle the glucose into the cells to be used for energy. Well, yeah, where else would they go? They could hang out in the blood, right? The glucose, the blood sugar from the food that you ate, it could just stay in the blood. But if it stays in the blood, that means you have high blood sugar or diabetes. So the pancreas can release insulin, a hormone, to tell or allow that blood glucose to go into the cells where our cells can perform cellular respiration to give us ATP, which is the energy we can use. If that doesn't happen, what's the point of having it? What's the point of glucose? All right, if blood glucose levels drop too low, the opposite, the pancreas releases a hormone called glucagon. This tells the liver to break down glycogen. What is glycogen? I know there's a lot of GL words here. Glycogen is many connected glucose molecules. So when we store glucose for later, remember glucose is sugar from our food. When we store it for later, we store it as glycogen, all these little chains of glucose molecules attached together. But when glucagon is released because your blood sugar is going low, this glycogen is going to break up into individual glucose molecules. It's going to go into the blood, and now our blood sugar goes up again. This raises the blood glucose levels, and then it can go into the cells where we can use it for energy. So if you skip a meal, no problem. Glucagon's got your back. Now, if you have diabetes, that means you have a lack of insulin or a lack of insulin sensitivity. That means, okay, yeah, the pancreas is putting out that insulin, but the cells are not recognizing that the insulin is there. So the cells are not opening up their channels to let the glucose in. The glucose is stuck on the outside in the blood. The blood sugar is going up. The cells don't allow it in. We're tired when that happens. And we end up with diabetes when we have insulin. They call that resistance, when your cells are not sensitive to insulin. It's almost like your body's not even making insulin, right? So with diabetes, you can have a lack of insulin, meaning the pancreas is not making it, or you can have insulin resistance, or both. With type 2 diabetes, it often starts with insulin resistance, and then it leads to a lack of insulin. And that's when type 2 diabetics need to inject themselves with insulin. Okay, let's go on. Living things grow, repair, and reproduce. Yes, we can actually repair our bodies. Isn't that great news? So some organisms reproduce asexually, especially single-celled organisms. They can make identical copies of themselves. And we're going to talk about a lizard that does that. Other organisms reproduce sexually, combining genetic information from two parents to make genetically unique offspring. Now, the New Mexico whiptail reproduces asexually. It does not need a mate. What does that mean? That means it's going to make an exact copy of itself because it's passing down its own DNA. Its own DNA is not going to be combined with a mate's DNA. So guess what? The New Mexico whiptails basically all look the same, and there are no males. It's an all-female species of lizard. I don't know, would that get lonely? I'm not really sure. So we've talked about the characteristics of living things. What do living things need? Well, they need air, they need water, they need macronutrients such as carbohydrates, fats, proteins, or nucleic acids. So we need these in large quantity, right? You need a pretty large amount of protein every day, a large amount of fat, a large amount of carbohydrate. And then there are micronutrients that you only need a little bit of, vitamins and minerals. So you can get those in your food. Some people choose to take capsules to make sure that they're getting enough vitamins and minerals, but they're only required in small quantities. Like sometimes I take a little vitamin D capsule. It's very tiny and it dissolves under my tongue. Okay, but carbohydrates and proteins, I can't eat a tiny little piece of protein and expect to survive or do well and thrive, right? My body needs those amino acids to make other proteins, such as insulin that we just talked about. So we need these things in macro or large quantities. We need these things in micro or small quantities. And I listed these things in order of how long you could go without them. Air, you can't go too long without air. Water, You can go a little longer, maybe a few days, maybe even a week, maybe even longer. Don't try that at home. Macronutrients, um, mm, you can't go too long without food, right? A week, 2 weeks. I think some people will fast for a month, but they do that under medical supervision and very specific reasons. So you can go longer without macronutrients than you can without water and air. And then micronutrients, you could go a pretty long time without taking, let's say, a calcium supplement or even ingesting anything that has calcium in it. That's just one example. You could probably go a really long time without ingesting anything that has zinc in it. However, over time, over a period of possibly months, you may start to feel bad. Now, it depends on the vitamin or mineral. Some you can go longer without, some you can't. I can tell you that sodium and potassium, you can't go too long without those because those are electrolytes. If you go outside on a hot day and sweat them out, by the end of the day, you might be low in electrolytes. So those are micronutrients that you would run out of more quickly. And that's why people drink Gatorade when they're doing sports outside, right? Especially in the heat, or other electrolyte beverages. But others, you can go a pretty long time. You might not feel great, but you can survive and not really notice the effects until you've been without those vitamins and minerals for a long time. Okay, that is it. I hope you enjoyed that lecture, and I will see you next time.